Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Harima. I and my wife Cheryl are the parents of Catherine, class of 2024. I'd like to warmly greet the more than 450 fellow parents that registered for this evening's event. Thank you for participating. We'd also like to suggest that for the best video experience, you set your view to the speaker option, and we think that will make it better for you. Let me also specifically welcome our panelists for this event. President Carol Quillen, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, Byron McCrae, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty, Philip Jefferson, and Dr. Robert Lutz, who's leading our COVID-19 prevention efforts. Tonight, we gather as the parent body of our Davidson College students who are about to complete a semester like any before. None of us could have predicted the pandemic and all of its consequences, including the challenges faced by a residential liberal arts college. In thinking about being together tonight, I asked our daughter to share a few of her perspectives from this first semester, and I'll share a couple of those comments with you. She said after choosing Davidson from among her options, she anticipated a caring community and academic excellence, and even during COVID, that is what she found here. She took a mix of online and hybrid classes. She's studying medieval European history, taking a writing seminar covering the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah, along with courses in the subjects that she's planning to double major in, economics and psychology. Catherine said that all of her professors have sought to maximize the learning experience, including one-on-one Zooms and some organized small groups outside when possible. While her social life has been limited and different from what the typical freshman might expect, she really thanks the orientation teams and residence hall officers for making it conducive to form some amazing new friends. Lastly, she said it was clear that the administration was demonstrating strong leadership in trying to provide students with the best possible environment under the circumstances, and is really looking forward to what the spring semester will bring. If you take a brief look at the Davidson website, it mentions a community seeking truth, that of deep sincerity, intellectual bravery, unquestioned integrity, and fundamental decency. Additionally, preparing students to make the world better through lives of leadership and service. We're fortunate to have that kind of administration at Davidson, led by our president, Carol Quillen, and a wonderful group of senior administrators, including our panelists tonight. With that, I'm pleased to introduce President Quillen, who will make some opening comments and provide an update before we move to the question and answer part of our time together. Thank you, Carol, for being with us.
There. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to Don for helping us out here, and grateful to my fellow panelists. And I want to apologize if my Zoom is a little bit unstable. It seems like that to me. So if it does to you, I apologize. I thought what I could do that would be the most helpful to you is maybe give just a really quick campus update about what's going on here, and then turn it over to your questions. We received a lot of great questions from this group, and I want to make sure we get to as many of them as possible. So just to begin, I want to thank you for entrusting your amazing children to us. They are a big part of the reason why we were able to have some students on campus this semester. And we are really grateful to them for their support and cooperation, and their enthusiasm and their humor as we lived through this new experience together. I also want to thank our incredible professors, without whom we could not have managed any of this. These are faculty members who quickly adapted complex material to the mode of instruction that made sense for them, depending on how many students signed up for their class and what they were trying to accomplish. Faculty members who recognized that they needed to try to connect with students in some way when they couldn't meet in person, and who remained committed to the well-being of these young people while they were homeschooling their own kids and worried about their parents and other things. And then our incredible staff, our student life staff who are on the ground here with our kids every day. And then the medical team who, led by Dr. Lutz, that really oversaw the implementation of our COVID plan. So all of these people really have been working very, very hard to make this semester possible for all of us. And I feel really lucky to be a part of this team. So with respect to COVID, we started off with some cases in the first couple of weeks that we were back on campus. Things sort of leveled out. We had a few hiccups along the way, but generally speaking, very, very low number of positive cases throughout the semester. Over the past 10 days or so, we've seen an uptick in positive cases, and I think that reflects the general state of this virus and its spread in our community in North Carolina, and particularly right around Davidson. So probably to be expected, as the virus spreads and we have more cases and a higher positivity rate, it seems that some of that would come onto our campus. Again, our students, generally speaking, have been incredibly cooperative and listened to us even when they didn't agree with what we were saying. And that has really been a huge, huge help. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have specifically for me. I know we have a list of questions that were submitted in advance, and I think it would be best and most productive for y'all if we turn to those questions as quickly as possible. So let me again say thank you so much for being here. Let me honor and express my deep gratitude to everyone at Davidson for what they've done to make this semester possible for all of us. And I look forward to engaging around the specific questions that you have. So I think I'll turn it back over to Don at this point.
Thank you, Carol. Your comments are really appreciated by everyone, I'm sure. Many of you have submitted questions for our panelists. Thank you. Please continue to add any questions you might have by using the chat function on your Zoom screen. And please select the Davidson College option when you do that. That will permit all of the panelists to see your questions. We're going to try and answer as many as we can. We have a lot of them, and we look forward to you submitting more. I am going to try to direct your question to the appropriate panelist. And as I've also already asked the panelists, if I direct it to someone that might want to have someone else answer it, they're going to do that. So why don't we get to it? Philip, maybe we can start with you. A couple of questions about the spring semester. In light of the fall semester, will we see more in-person classes in the spring? If not, why not? And are we offering the same number of courses as a usual semester?
Thank you for your question, Dan. And I know it came from a parent. I think it's a very relevant question. And when I think about the possible response to it, the first thing I want to do is acknowledge the success of this fall semester. And the source of this success has been the students, their willingness to participate in the different protocols that we have set forth. And that's really allowed us to be together in the community while, of course, staying apart. So I want to start by expressing my deep appreciation for all of the work that students have done to make this possible. Now, as we look ahead to the spring semester, we've completed registration for the spring semester, and faculty members have chosen the modes of instruction that they will use. For those who may not have these modes at the tip of their fingers, I want to say there are basically three types of instruction. One would be online. The second would be a hybrid, which is sort of a mixture of online and in person. And the third mode of operation is in person. So looking ahead to the spring, we're looking at a split between online versus the other two modes, which have some in-person component of about 52% versus 48%, which is pretty much what we saw here in the fall. So given that stability over the 2 semester brings me to the second part. So the answer to the first part of the question is that it's about the same when we go into the spring semester, okay? And so the follow-up question is, if not, that is, if we're not seeing more in-person classes, why not, okay? And I think an answer to that is that we're trying to achieve multiple objectives with regards to the mode of teaching. First and foremost is that we're trying to keep everyone safe. We're trying to have as much accessibility to our courses for students who are situated very differently, either with respect to geography or temporally with respect to time. So that's very important. And then at the same time, we want to be mindful of our professors and the constraints that they might face. So where we find ourselves is trying to carry forward our mission as an educational institution in the context of a pandemic. And from your watching of the news, you know that the virus has waxed and waned, but also surged. And we want academic continuity throughout the variability with respect to the virus. We expect that to persist into the second semester, and we want to really stick with what has been successful for us. And so that's where we are for the spring.
Thank you, Philip. Dr. Lutz, as you know, many parents have had concerns about their students, both on and off campus. And one of the questions that's come up is, are there 2 or 3 lessons that we've learned from the fall semester that are going to inform us for the spring semester?
Yes, good evening. We have certainly learned a whole number of lessons throughout the semester. And I've been giving a lot of thought to that question, is what are some of the top 3? And I would say that the first one I'd throw out there is that the protocols that we talk about, the mask wearing, the physical distancing, and regular hand hygiene, they work. And in particular, they work if they're followed. And the instances where I've seen student-to-student transmission and being able to document it, it was as a result of not following these precautions. And I'll throw an example, particularly this for the freshman parents, is that the freshman orientation, was very different this year, but it still involved working with the students in small groups. I think it was groups of about 10. And about not the first week they were here, but the second week they were here, we had 5 freshmen test positive on kind of one of our first big days of testing. That was extremely concerning to me, and I was worried about the impact that freshman orientation may have had on that. But in fact, when I dug into the details, none of these 5 students were in the same small group. And for those that were related, there were a couple of students that seemed to transmit the disease between each other. They were very close contacts and would have been identified in contact tracing had we had that opportunity to do that. Subsequently, we retested the whole freshman class, and we didn't get any more. And so when I look back, to me, that lesson is we can do things like that involve large numbers of students. And if we follow the precautions, they do work. We've carried on a number of those things in athletics through our strength and conditioning training, through our practices, et cetera. And it's the same thing in these specific groups of people. When there's been a positive test with an athlete, we haven't seen transmission through anything that they've done on the athletic field. The second lesson I think is important to bring up is that We are very fortunate to be in an environment with the support of the administration that we can do widespread testing. So every student, every week, that gives us a rapid turnaround of the results. So many of you know that, or may know that I spent many years in the Army, and one of the things that at least my bosses wanted to do is, we call it getting inside the decision cycle of the enemy. So to move faster than they move. And from my perspective, we're able to move almost as fast as the virus can move. And I think that has been huge. So we get our tests back relatively quickly. We're able to intervene with contact tracing and quarantine. And I'll give a great example. I mean, just this last week, starting on November 11th, so on Veterans Day, between now and then, we had these 12 cases. And we were able to move so fast because the first 6 of these, in fact, almost all of them, were identified through the rapid antigen test, which was subsequently confirmed through a PCR test. But we got them the day that they developed symptoms. We tested them. We got their close contacts from within the last 48 hours. And so we were literally able to isolate their close contacts before their contacts became infectious. And that, in a nutshell, is the way to stop transmission through a population like ours. So I feel that we're very fortunate in having that ability to do that here, and the team that I work with that puts people into quarantine and gets them moved around is just phenomenal. And so I'm blessed to be here. The final lesson I would say is that, yes, we have done really well, but I will also say that we relax at our own risk. And it's very tempting, particularly after we had settled down after that bunch of cases in that second, third week of school. And we had a pretty long lull, to fight the instinct to really roll back any restrictions. And from my perspective, I almost look at that as like adding tinder into a campfire ring. So it's not on fire, you're kind of filling up the tinder box, and then all it needs is a spark, and it can spread really quickly. And that's the thing I worry most about. And as we saw the disease get worse around us and it started to probe our defenses, so to speak, we saw some of that. And we saw it move rapidly through a couple of small populations. Again, we were able to, as far as I can tell, shut that down. We retested everybody on Monday and did about 1,560, 70 tests with only one positive case. And so that to me was a little reassuring. Now, we're not taking my eyes off the prize. We're still continuing to test and continue to look at things. But the real challenge I see, particularly as we do this again and come back in the spring, is how do we make this a great experience for the students, yet still maintain what I'm going to call these firewalls that prevent rapid spread of the virus. And that's sort of the continuing challenge, what we'll look at over the December break and into January, and see how we can better improve the student experience by applying the lessons that we've learned throughout the semester.
Thank you, Dr. Lutz, and all of us as parents really appreciate the efforts to keep our students safe. Students and families are in the process of planning for next semester. In Byron, one of the questions that came up is, when do students need to decide if they will be remote or return in residence? And in light of the current data, are there concerns about reconvening in the spring?
Thank you for asking. I would say that we're vigilant about the spring, and that we've put into place several plans to ensure safety to the best of our ability. So that might include testing more than once a week, at least initially. It might also include some of the restrictions that Dr. Lutz has already mentioned. And so maybe for the first several weeks, students might not be able to have visitors in their rooms based on what we learned this semester about transmission between students in their private rooms. That said, we want to make sure every student is confident in the decision they're making to return. So we don't want to rush anyone. And at the same time, if you know you're not coming back, we're going to use your room. And so please take the time to make a decision that you're comfortable with. And please don't feel rushed in terms of making a deadline or rushed in terms of deciding to come back. And know that we are planning behind the scenes for several contingencies to make sure students' return is as safe as possible.
Great. A couple follow-on questions, Byron, for you around planning and the exam period. Will students be allowed to stay on campus through the exams in the spring? The current schedule has them returning home before taking exams. If that schedule stays the same, could students request to stay on campus and complete their exams in the spring?
Sure. I mean, we encourage families to plan for adaptability. We don't know what the virus is going to do. I mean, we certainly hope that as a nation, we flatten the curve by then. And I also understand that students may have really valid reasons for wanting to be on campus to complete their exams. So we'll work with them on an individual basis. They'll hear from Walter Snipes, our assistant dean of students for residence life, and he'll be asking them at least several times to indicate to us what their plans are. And so it certainly provides the most healthy environment if students do complete their exams from home. And like I said, if a student does need to be here through the exam period, we can certainly make that work.
One more before I let you off the hook and turn to a couple others. And Dr. Lutz, don't cringe when this question comes up, but many parents have asked about whether or not there could be additional opportunities for social interactions for the students. And one of it is that many parents are wondering about the feelings of loneliness for some students and isolation and not wanting that to be what they perceive in the spring. So is that something, Byron, that is being thought about with regard to ways for students to safely interact in the spring semester?
Absolutely. And I think there's a more general question about how we're receiving that and what kind of planning we're going into it. So we've done everything this semester from food trucks where the students actually did stand 6 feet apart to get food to some outdoor movies. And so in the broader scheme of things, we're absolutely hiring an additional counselor for the spring semester. We will do a virtual activities fair. And then we will lean into what's going on locally in the nation before implementing other in-person things, like the SGA did a speed friending event, and they got clearance from Dr. Lutz to do that. And so we actually have a team that meets on a weekly basis to more or less jury some ideas about in-person social activities and come up with the safest way to do them. So Davidson Outdoors, for example, will lead some trips that are as safe as they can possibly be. And we want to do that in the most discerning manner possible so that we're not facilitating activities that actually facilitate the spread, right? So the takeaway message is absolutely yes. We're going to try to do our best to offer holistic options, some virtual, some in person. But there are also things that families can do. They can encourage students to follow the health advisors on Instagram. The health advisors post messages about health and safety and they really try to combat isolation and loneliness. Follow the union board on Instagram to know what kind of hybrid and or in-person events are going on. So I think those are tools you can give your students to help them feel like they have agency, and so that the isolation and loneliness isn't happening to them, but there are organic things they can do to feel connected, really.
I would just, if I could just add, Don, just a second to that. I mean, I think students are coming up with ideas that are creative and safe, and they've been great about checking with Mike Good at the union or Dr. Lutz just to make sure that their instincts are right. But I played my first spike ball game in the context of a spike ball tournament that was a benefit for a local and the Humane Society, local Humane Society. And there were, a lot of people participated, all distanced, and there are events like that happen on campus a lot. So I think we're working hard to try to give students those options, and also, as Dean McCrae said, to empower students to bring their ideas to us so that what we're suggesting is actually in keeping with the kinds of things that they want to do.
That's great. I think for all the parents on the call tonight, it's a good reminder that our students don't necessarily tell us all of the things that might be known to them that are available. So we might want to ask, and having two sons who have graduated from college and now Catherine at Davidson, it's a good reminder to myself as well. A couple questions have come up about the move out process for this semester and the move in process. So let me try and group those, and I'll leave it to whomever wants to respond. One question is, can students leave their belongings in their room when they depart from this semester in anticipation of returning in the spring? And what will the move-in process be like? Will it be staggered, such as it was in the fall? And questions about testing and restrictions the first few weeks. So I know there's a group of questions in there.
So I think I can handle part of them, and Dr. Lutz can handle part of them as well. Students can certainly leave belongings here, as provided that they're obviously returning in the spring semester. And then in terms of the return in the spring semester, we're not anticipating the kind of stagger that we had this fall. And so our plan is for all students who are going to be here in the spring to be back before classes begin. Certainly, if the virus does something nationally that we need to adapt to, we will communicate that as efficiently and quickly as we can to students and to you with our rationale for a change. That said, we do anticipate some students being able to come back a bit early, so it won't be as if all students are returning at the same time. Dr. Lutz, did I get that about right? Yes.
So we will have a lot of the athletes, because of the spring sports, will be, there's anticipation that we'll have sporting seasons to include fall and spring sports. So they're going to be coming back in January. So we're going to build up a little, but then the majority of the students are going to come back that 23rd and 24th weekend. So this is a space where we used the lessons that we learned from coming together in August. And one of the things, if you pull up the dashboard and look, you'll see that there was about a week-long, 2-week-long spike in cases that ran across kind of that second week that each group came in. So we looked back at that and said, okay, we're anticipating, even with the pre-arrival testing, we got students showing up the 23rd, 24th, classes start the 25th. When are we going to see a spike? We're going to see a spike probably that second week. And so the question that we didn't know the answer to in August is, can we absorb that spike through isolation of those that are sick and quarantine of their close contacts? So kind of running what those numbers looked like, what availability we have, we feel like we can absorb that spike as we come back. There are things that we can do to mitigate what we know is going to happen. And so one of them is going to be to provide some restrictions for those first few weeks. And I anticipate probably about 3 weeks, that minimizes visitors in rooms and exposure in close quarters to anyone. And what that does is it allows us, we know there's going to be people that have infections. The real problem comes in the number of people that we have to put into quarantine, because that can be really explosive if you're not careful. And so we anticipate anywhere from 2 to 4 people per person go into quarantine, but we have had instances where we've had 12 people go into quarantine from one positive case, or 15 into quarantine from a positive case. And that we cannot support with the amount of quarantine beds that we have. So we have to kind of figure things out. So that's why we put those restrictions in place. And that's kind of the messaging that when I talk to students, is that what helps us be successful in the long run, because we get through this spike, things drop down, and then we're on our way to a successful semester.
Yeah, and to add to what Dr. Lutz and Dean McCrae are saying, we know now that the pre-arrival testing can't catch every student who's going to return, that there will be potentially some positive cases that we don't catch in the pre-arrival testing. And that's the group that we need to identify quickly with additional testing early on, as Dean McCrae was saying, and then isolate those students. Our students mercifully have had mild symptoms thus far, so we're very confident in our ability with the system we have in place, the relationships we have with local providers, that we're able to care effectively for students and get them care they need. Hopefully this never happens, but we're confident about that. It's just when we have many students go into quarantine to keep other kids from getting the virus, that's what becomes challenging. So through a combination of aggressive testing at the beginning of the semester, pretty strict rules that try to sort of limit each of our close contacts, we tell our students, for the first couple of weeks, you need to act as if everyone around you is contagious. That's how we get through these first couple of weeks. And then after that, we can see where we are and go to a slightly less restrictive environment. That's the plan. And I think our students get that, right? They've been very receptive when we said, we need to, as we did this week, we need to no visitors. People are trying to go home. We don't want a whole bunch of people going into quarantine right before they're trying to go home. The virus is more prevalent in the community. We need you guys to please limit your contacts really, really significantly towards the end of the semester. And they've been really good about that. So that's kind of the plan. We did learn more testing, more restrictions early on, and we think we've got a way of managing through that.
Staying with the COVID topic for maybe one or two more questions. Some questions have come up. Go ahead, Dr. Lutz.
Yeah, I would just jump in for the parents on the call. So, we've tested your student this week before coming home. The test is a snapshot in time. So be aware over the next couple of weeks, particularly that second week your student is home, that despite everything that we've done, there's the potential that they may become ill. So while I want to reassure you that we've tested your students, I want y'all to still be cognizant that the risk is there coming from one environment to another, and please be safe. So thanks.
Thank you. The questions that are coming up are around the vaccine, and we've probably all read and heard about the potential positive aspirations of Pfizer and Moderna. So one of the questions was, if the vaccine becomes available, and knowing it's first going to go to those who need it most, the elderly, first responders, the question was if either Dr. Lutz or Carol, if there's going to be any protocol with regard to prioritization for colleges, and who might be making that decision in the government administration or otherwise with regard to the availability of a vaccine.
I defer to Dr. Lutz on this question. I don't know the answer to that question. I think we will work. What I will say is that we are in constant partnership with the state of North Carolina and Dr. Cohen, who is advisor to the governor here, and that the state has been cognizant of the situation on college campuses and mindful of the importance of testing and the importance of having young people in school. But we have to acknowledge, honestly, as a country, we want our frontline healthcare providers, we want most vulnerable populations, and we want to respect what makes sense for the country. And so we work with the state to explain what we need and what would be great for us. They've given us and made the distribution of antigen tests available to higher ed, because they recognize the congregate living situations that we have here on our campuses. But as soon as we know anything about either the federal distribution plan or the state distribution plan, we'll share it. I'm confident that we'll know fairly early because we have such good communication with the state. I don't know, Dr. Lutz, do you want to?
I think you said that pretty well at this point. We just don't know, and I know we've reached out to see what their plan is.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a national. My hope is that there's a national distribution plan that makes use of the companies that really know logistics well and can support widespread distribution. And so I have personal ideas about what that is, but I don't think they're particularly relevant. I am confident we'll know fairly early because of our partnership with the state.
Terrific, thank you. Well, no discussion with parents would be without somebody asking something about food. And so one of the questions was if the dining options might be changing, or the choice of foods, or the methodology in which students are now choosing to get their meals.
So I can try just take a first stab at that question and then defer to my colleagues here. We've tried to, so when we think about serving food here at Davidson, we've thought about what's most important. One, we want to make sure we can move students through lines quickly. We don't want a bunch of people standing around in line. We don't want the line backed up for too long for lots of reasons. We want to make sure that all students with all of their dietary needs have options that work for them. And we want to try to make it as efficient and as pleasant as possible for the students. And of course, really safe for the people serving and cooking the food. So that's been guiding us. We did expand options once we realized we could add the grill, for example, back in Vail, and still move students through. Students are able to use the cafe and the Wildcat Den a little bit more than they could at the beginning of the semester. And we're in conversation with students all the time about the options that we offer and how we can better kind of meet their needs. I eat a lot at Vail, and to me, I don't eat there all the time, but I eat a lot, and Dean Jefferson eats a lot there, leads there every day, I think. And so I think we are aware of the quality of the food, and it's really good food. I think students may get tired of eating in one place all the time, but I mean, it's pretty good food, and we're only going to do things that allow us to move students through quickly, keep everybody safe, and meet everybody's dietary needs. So that's the plan. I'm hopeful that that students who have questions or concerns or feel like their needs aren't being met will talk to us, and I can speak on behalf of the folks that work in dining services that they are extremely responsive to students. I don't know, Philip, do you want to add? I always get the salad bar personally, so.
I can speak to this because I have the good fortune of going to Vail Commons for lunch, and the food is of very high quality, very tasty, and very importantly, part of what I do when I go there is that I do look around and make sure that the students are participating in our protocols in a way that will keep everyone safe. And so I can testify to the fact that they have throughout the semester. The lines move very quickly. The place is well ventilated. So all of the features that you would want to be present in this current situation is there, and the food is good.
Great, thank you. Byron, this one might be for you. A lot of parents have submitted questions citing concern for their students' mental health and all the issues they've been having to face given the kind of semester we've had. Would you say in general that students seem to be coping well? And what resources have been made available to support any mental health struggles they might have?
Yeah, I mean, I think this fall has been hard on everyone for a variety of reasons. And so it's hard on us, right? And so it's not, and so by no means do I mean to minimize what students are feeling. It's just, I think it's important that we all recognize that, as a colleague says, being human is more difficult these days. And so I think we need to honor that and recognize it as true. And sometimes, and for some students, getting to that recognition can help ignite a plan of action, right? And so, as I've mentioned before, we are absolutely hiring an additional counselor for the spring semester. A lot of our therapy was done remotely, but we did have a couple counselors do some sessions in person in recognition for students' need and desire to see other people. And so some of the ideas I mentioned before included things students can do, like following the health advisors on Instagram, but they can also talk to their holistic advisor. They can reach out to their hall counselor or RA, I know that some parents have completed student of concern reports to alert us, the administration of the college, about concerns that they have for their student. And what that does is that activates a really discrete a series of kind of outreach. And so the assistant dean of students and case manager in my office might reach out to the student directly. We might have the hall counselor or RA check in on the student, the chaplain, an academic advisor. And so we try to find a person who's really close to that student to reach out and say to them, how are you doing? Or just really directly, someone's concerned about you. And so we want to know if and how we can help you. Don, is that helpful? Am I getting to the source of the parents' concerns, do you think?
I think you are. Speaking with other parents from time to time, I think that sort of encapsulates the concern for how are students dealing with what is clearly a different semester than any of us expected. So thank you. For several parents, Carol, of seniors, I'm sure, they're curious about commencement. They know it's planned and scheduled for May 16, but any thoughts on expectations for being able to keep that calendar?
So thank you for that question. We have a group of, our commencement group on campus is working closely with students to try to identify what about commencement is most important to them. Our hope is that we'll be able to do an in-person event. We recognize that this depends on things beyond our control. I wish I could give you a clear time frame about when we'll know more. I'm hopeful that by the beginning of the semester and maybe a little bit into the semester, we'll be able to come up with a plan. But it's clear that our students want to be together as a class, and that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. How can we try to make something like that happen for them? And we don't know what the situation is going to be in May. As I think Dean McCrae said, maybe we'll flatten the curve by then. Maybe, who knows, maybe we'll have more prevalent vaccine availability. We just don't know. But our plan right now is to do class of 2021 and then class of 2020 the following week. So that's the aspiration. And we're working with students to try to figure out how to make sure that the elements of commencement that matter the most to them, that we try in some way to replicate or at least approximate.
Thank you. Many parents on the call have students who are also athletes. And so one of the questions, in fact, a few questions that come up is, what are the plans for sports in the spring, both for spring sports and fall sports that were not able to be held?
So maybe I'll start and then Robert can follow up with some of the safety protocols that we have in place for our scholar athletes. So the plan right now, so the schedules have been released for men's and women's basketball. Both of those sports are scheduled to start in a little bit later this month. We have modified schedules for spring sports and fall sports. Many of our sports are playing a reduced schedule and a more regionalized schedule to limit travel and to minimize overnight stays. We have made a couple of changes. The Atlantic 10 conference has canceled the indoor track championships and did that because recognizing that the athletes that would participate in those championships will have the opportunity to participate in the outdoor championships later in the spring. And the timing, it seemed an extremely risky activity to undertake when it was scheduled. And the conference has also delayed the swimming and diving championships till April. So the A10 conference has made some changes in its schedule with health and safety in mind. And we've built schedules that have some flexibility in them, hoping to play all these sports in the winter and spring. It's a heavy lift for our staff, and it's a heavy lift for the facilities, some of which are shared, but that's the plan. The NCAA has a recommended protocol for health and safety, and the Atlantic 10 conference has adopted those protocols. The Pioneer Football League is a little bit behind in how it's the A10 in planning, and I think that's because of the complexities of football and the complexities of that league. But our plan, we have aspirations to play possibly a modified schedule, abiding by the gold standard NCAA safety guidelines. Dr. Lutz, correct me if I was wrong in anything I just said, which is highly possible, and maybe if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think you're spot on with what it's going to look like in the spring. There's still some unknowns as schedules come together, but I feel pretty confident. We worked hard this fall to go through some practice protocols and locker room protocols and how we were doing our strength and conditioning and all of these things. And as I look at everything that happened and I look at all our cases and how the disease was transmitted, I think I said before, I can't tie any transmission of the disease to anything on the field in either practice or, well, we didn't have any competition, but any practice or scrimmages. And that for me is extremely reassuring as far as what the spring might look like. And it's not that we weren't tested, because we did have athletes who got the disease and participated in activities, participated in scrimmage, and yet through the way that we're doing things, it did not appear to cause any spread. So I'm hopeful as we go into the spring. I think the national situation is the big unknown, and we'll see how that shakes out.
I would say that one of the things that because we've been testing athletes more frequently in these past few months, we're sort of and testing all of our students every week. We are kind of aware of where we all are most likely to maybe to be exposed to this virus, and it's not on campus in normal activities. It's in social situations, eating indoors in restaurants, particularly crowded restaurants, taking your mask off, leaving it off for the evening. These are the situations, in someone's room, more than a few people, no mask. These are the situations where transmission occurs. And so the more we can just help our students understand that, then the more activities we're able to kind of design with their safety in mind that are fun to do. You can play spike ball with a mask, and turns out that if you're partnered with a nationally ranked spike ball player, even if you have never played before and are like a tree standing there, you will win. So and it's fun to win. So I mean, I think we're finding things out, like that's something you can do, and there are other things like that we can do. We just need to help our students. We need to listen to our students and figure out what gives them joy and the sense of connection, and try to create more of those opportunities for them. But going out to eat is a bad idea. It is a bad idea. And I think that's hard for them. We have great, they want to go out, they want to hang out. And that's hard. It's hard for all of us, it's hard for all of us. We're social creatures, and we're living much more isolated lives than we're accustomed to. And it's very hard. And so, we're all in it together here.
That's actually a perfect tee up for the next question. And that is that a few parents have asked about parties or risky behaviors that might have taken place, and student accountability. And the question is, how can we help the kids better understand those kinds of situations and to practice better safety?
Yes, I think you certainly know your situation amongst your family or at home. And so just reminding them, as caringly as possible. I call it a feedback sandwich or gratitude sandwich. Like, we are so proud of you and what you and your peers at college have done. But remember our neighbor, remember our grandparents, remember why we want you to do this, and we know you can't, right? And so it's that kind of feedback that you can give as families. Or when they're saying that dean of students is such a big jerk, why is he making this policy? I need you to have my back, or our collective back, because we're enacting restrictive policies to stop the spread. So I don't mean to be glib or flippant about it, and I'm really grateful that parents have asked that, because we've made some really tough decisions that students didn't like. And I'm grateful to have a president who's willing to listen to that. And I've certainly met with the SGA and gotten advice from them and brought it to this team to implement. And so the SGA is working directly with our director of dining services to think about adaptations to the meal plans, for example, or not to meal service. So I say all that to say, let's work together as partners in this. And if you're hearing things that are concerning, certainly let my office know. When there have been students that have violated our policies, we have made the decision to give them some time away from campus. And so we've really honored our commitment to your students and to you to make sure that the people who remain on campus and residents are going to follow the rules.
Dr. Lutz, a specific question has come up about intramural sports and intercollegiate sports. And so the question is, if college athletes are able to get together in scrimmages and practices, why is it that non-athletes or intramural sports and clubs can't do the same?
So I think that the biggest difference comes in that when we have our Division I athletes on the field for practicing scrimmages, they are under constant supervision from their athletic trainers, the athletic medicine, and their coaches. And in intramural sports, it is very difficult to put that into place, that level of supervision, and keeping eyes on what's going on and making on-the-spot corrections as needed. Specifically, too, in terms of some of the club sports that want to play other colleges, there's a real challenge there because, I'm completely 100% in support of our club sports meeting the NCAA guidelines for return to athletics and giving them the support to do that. But I don't know that the other colleges that they're going to play have that capability that we have. And I'm reluctant to put them in positions where they're going up against an opposing team that hasn't met at least the minimum standards. So I continue to work with Alan Sutton and the people in PE to provide guidance to the clubs and the intramurals so that we can get that experience out there, because we have shown that we can do it safely. But I think somebody used the term heavy lift. It's a heavy lift for us in athletics to keep that safety profile. And it's very challenging to do in the intramural realm. Certainly something from student life we can take a look at and see if there's ways we can help accomplish that.
As our evening draws to a close, we probably have time for one final question. And it's a fairly good and important and high level one. Davidson's future depends on recruiting students. How are we going to be doing that when students can't even come to visit and experience Davidson? And how are we going to make the case for a close community under the pandemic conditions we're currently operating with?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I'm sorry that we don't have Chris Gruber here on the phone, but this has been a really urgent concern. One of the things about Davidson that we know is that when students, prospective students, set foot on campus and experience the nature of the community, that is often a difference maker for them and their desire to want to be a part of it. And it's a palpable feeling, and it's hard to replicate that. The admissions team has done an amazing job about scheduling opportunities for prospective students to speak with other students, to talk to faculty members, to connect with one another, to meet me and ask me questions. And so we've tried to to reach out to students and give as much of an opportunity to connect with the Davidson community as we can. We've had the advantage of being able to do virtual programming at all hours, so that we've actually reached a lot more international students and students in different time zones that wouldn't have the wherewithal or the opportunity to visit Davidson. And I think our being intentional about that has maybe expanded the number of students that we're able to reach. We have students giving virtual tours on campus. So the student will walk around with a camera or a phone and give a virtual tour to students who are on a Zoom call. And these have proven to be fairly effective. The interest overall in residential higher ed is down this year. I mean, that's not surprising, right? Either students are going to feel like they can wait, or people are preoccupied with the virus, with the economy, with the election, with all these other things that have been on people's minds. But I do think that admission has been incredibly creative about trying to reach these students. And some of the programming that we've developed as a result of the pandemic under this sort of this kind of crisis, we will continue once the pandemic is over, because these programs have proven to be so effective. I wish we could have people visit us on campus, but our priority is your children and our community, and we feel like we don't want to encourage people to fly. We don't want, we just aren't quite there yet. Hopefully at some point in the spring, things will be different. But right now, I think we've adapted our programming as best we can. We are talking to people about the nature of our community and how we are able to be here on campus, and our students are partners in this with us. Our faculty are here and engaged. And so I think that helps. That helps. Others may have things to add. Philip, I think.
Yeah, I do want to add to that, because I think one of our big selling points is the success that we've had so far in keeping everyone safe. That can only happen when each individual is manifesting their care for other people in the community. And so hope we will continue with what we're doing. It's been successful thus far. And so people looking at us from afar, I'm hoping that they will say, wow, this college was able to pull off something that some other institutions didn't have to do. And the follow-up question is, how did they do that? Well, it could only be as a result of our affinity for each other is what enables us to stay sufficiently apart so that we can be together. Okay, then I know there was a lot of conflict in that sentence, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, this has been a wonderful evening. And on behalf of the many parents who have participated, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Philip, Byron, and Dr. Lutz. You provided candid and informative responses to our concerns and questions, and we sincerely appreciate your willingness to do so. And finally, thank you to all of my fellow parents. This was a great turnout tonight. We hope it's been worthwhile for you. And as we depart, one parent to another, I hope you have a nice Thanksgiving, a safe and healthy holiday season, and the opportunity for some additional time with your student child. Good night and be well.